Have you ever wondered what goes on in a store when nobody suspects the boss is watching? Does everyone strictly follow the rules, or do they bend them once they think they're free of scrutiny? Let me tell you a tale that explores these questions, a story filled with surprises, self-reflection, and second chances. It begins on a crisp autumn morning, just before dawn, when the CEO of a sprawling retail empire decides to step away from pristine spreadsheets and corporate meetings to see what's really happening on the ground. Mark Adams was 52, with salt and pepper hair that hinted at both wisdom and wear. He was the founder and CEO of Adams Emporium, a chain of retail stores selling an assortment of home goods, everything from kitchen utensils to luxurious comforters. For nearly 30 years, he'd poured his heart into this business, starting with a humble shop in a sleepy Midwestern town. In those early days, he worked alongside his late father, greeting local customers by name. Over time, with dedication and a knack for understanding trends, Mark expanded that single storefront into a nationwide network of over 200 locations. The company's slogan, "Where Home Begins," captured his belief that every home deserved comfort and warmth, regardless of budget. Yet for all his success, Mark now felt strangely disconnected. Lately, he'd been poring over glowing reports from his regional managers. Sales figures soared, inventory turnover was healthy, and new locations opened on schedule. According to the data, everything was running smoothly. But Mark sensed a gap between these polished numbers and the day-to-day realities inside his stores. He remembered something his father often said: "A good leader knows what's on the page, but a great leader knows what's between the lines." That phrase echoed in Mark's mind as he brewed a cup of coffee early one Monday and stared at a profit and loss statement on his laptop. He felt an itch to investigate, to see for himself if Adams Emporium still lived up to the values he cherished. Without informing any district manager or executive, Mark decided to make an undercover visit to a store he'd never set foot in. He picked store number 87, located in a suburban shopping center, an hour's drive from corporate headquarters. He wanted to see how staff treated customers, how they handled complaints, and how effectively his cherished family values were being put into practice. Before leaving, he rummaged through his closet for casual clothes that would help him blend in. Faded jeans, a simple sweatshirt, and comfortable sneakers. Gone were his tailored suits and shiny dress shoes. He even left his fancy watch on a dresser. He wanted to look like any other regular shopper popping in on a weekday. He drove out of the city, navigating through quiet residential blocks until he reached the busy shopping plaza where store 87 was located. He parked in a far corner, walked across the lot, and felt a rush of anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. After nearly 3 decades as CEO, it was strangely invigorating to be just another face in the crowd. He stepped through the sliding glass doors, and a faint jingle announced his arrival. Immediately, he noted the smell of fresh coffee from a small cafe corner near the entrance. Music played softly through overhead speakers. The floors were clean, the aisles organized, and it all seemed pleasantly inviting on the surface. Mark wandered up and down those aisles, taking in the displays of home decor, cookware, and linens. He filled his cart with a few items: a set of ceramic bowls, some plush towels, and a small electric heater. Everything looked good on the outside, but Mark was searching for cracks beneath that glossy finish. He turned his attention to the customer service desk near the front, where a sign read, "Let us help you," in big, cheerful letters. Yet the counter sat empty, and 3 customers waited there, fidgeting with visible impatience. The first, an older gentleman with a walking cane, kept glancing at his watch. Behind him stood a young couple, whispering to each other in frustration. Finally, after several minutes, a tall, gangly employee in his mid-20s emerged from a door marked "Employees Only." The name tag read, Toby. He ambled over to the desk, looking more bored than apologetic. Without a greeting or an apology for the wait, he asked, "Yeah, what's up?" The older man explained he needed a receipt reprint for an item he purchased the day before. Toby's response was an indifferent shrug, and a muttered complaint about unclear policies. The man tried to hand Toby a partially faded receipt to show the purchase date, but Toby cut him off. His voice was flat. "We can't process that if it's not clear. It's in our policy." He didn't even attempt to see if there was any alternative. Mark's stomach sank. Growing up, he'd watched his father hustle to please every customer, no matter how small their request. Here was Toby, dismissing people without the slightest empathy. The older man sighed, pocketed his receipt, and hobbled away, grumbling that he'd never come back. The young couple stepped forward, asking if Toby could point them toward a specific brand of cutting board. Without lifting his eyes from his phone, Toby jerked a thumb. "Somewhere near kitchenware. Just head that way." Mark noticed them exchanging a disheartened glance before trudging off, the man shaking his head. Soon it was Mark's turn. He approached with a polite smile. "Excuse me," he said. "Could you help me check the price on this electric heater? I didn't see a tag." Toby flicked a brief glance at the box. "There's a scanner over there," he replied, motioning vaguely across the store. Mark waited to see if Toby would at least offer to show him. Nothing. Toby just stared at his phone again. "Thanks," Mark murmured, masking his frustration. He wheeled his cart away, his mind brimming with questions. How had such an employee slipped through the cracks? And how had this store manager allowed such behavior? Mark decided to roam the aisles to see if this was an isolated case. As he walked past racks of decorative pillows, he spotted a stocky, middle-aged employee named Ryan, according to his name tag, reorganizing a display of blankets. Mark approached with the same question about the electric heater, curious to see how Ryan would respond. Ryan paused his work immediately and turned to Mark. "Of course," he said, smiling. "We've got a couple of heater models. Let me walk you over and show you the differences." He led Mark a few aisles over, explaining which model was best for small rooms, which worked for bigger spaces, and how each was rated for energy efficiency. Mark noticed the difference right away. Ryan was courteous, knowledgeable, and genuinely eager to help. Once Mark felt his questions had been answered, he turned to Ryan again. "Thanks for taking the time. You seem to know a lot about these products. How long have you been here?" Ryan's face lit up. "I've been with Adams Emporium for about 11 years. Started off part-time, just looking for something stable after losing my previous job. But this place grew on me, you know? I enjoy helping people. It feels good to assist someone and see them leave happier than when they walked in." There was a hint of pride in Ryan's voice that warmed Mark's heart. This was exactly the spirit he'd hoped to find in his employees. He decided to press further. "It shows you really care. I have to ask, though, how are things in this store recently? I noticed the customer service desk was unmanned for a bit." Ryan hesitated, scanning the aisles to ensure no one overheard. "It's tough," he admitted in a quiet tone. "We're understaffed, and a lot of new hires don't stick around. Some of the ones who do stay aren't interested in customer service. And management, well, they try, but we need more support, better training. I love the job, but it's frustrating." Mark nodded. He felt a mix of admiration for Ryan's dedication and disappointment in the system. Ryan's warm approach contrasted sharply with Toby's apathy, and that contrast troubled Mark. Maybe Toby's behavior was more widespread than he'd realized. Was Toby simply a symptom of a deeper corporate issue? Mark thanked Ryan for his time and headed out. Though the store appeared well kept, Toby's rudeness overshadowed that first positive impression. Driving back to headquarters, Mark found himself recalling the heartfelt motto his father used whenever he trained new hires. People first, policies second. Clearly, Toby hadn't taken that lesson to heart, if he'd ever learned it at all. The next day, Mark returned to his corner office on the 20th floor of the corporate building. He requested every document related to Store 87. Staff performance reviews, training logs, complaints, feedback forms, and turnover statistics. His executive assistant gathered a thick folder of records, which Mark sifted through meticulously. He found Toby's name appearing multiple times in customer complaints describing his curt demeanor. One complaint even noted Toby had scolded a customer for asking too many questions. Each time, Toby either received a brief warning or faced no real consequence, possibly because management was desperate for warm bodies on the floor. On the flip side, Mark discovered that Ryan had glowing evaluations, a perfect attendance record, and a stack of positive customer feedback. Several store managers had recommended Ryan for a promotion to assistant manager. Yet each proposal was stalled due to budget constraints or the fear of losing such a dependable floor associate. Mark felt a pang of guilt. The system he'd built was overlooking a devoted employee while tolerating poor behavior from others. He reached out to Stephanie Holmes, one of his most trusted executives in charge of regional oversight. They spent the next hour dissecting the file, acknowledging how Toby's negative traits might be partly rooted in inadequate supervision, overwork, or personal stress. Still, that didn't excuse his actions. Mark decided enough was enough. He needed to confront this store's problems head-on and enact changes that would ripple through the company. A week later, Mark drove back to Store 87, this time wearing his usual business attire. He walked through the door without any disguise, shaking hands and introducing himself as the CEO. The store manager, a tall woman named Sheila with tired eyes, greeted him nervously. She'd just found out from a quick corporate memo that Mark was visiting. Together they gathered the entire staff in the cramped break room behind the sales floor. Employees milled about, whispering in subdued tones, wondering why the CEO had come in person. Toby hung at the back with crossed arms, looking a bit pale. Ryan stood off to one side, curiosity etched on his face. Mark cleared his throat. "Good morning. I know this is sudden, but I believe transparency is important. Recently I came to this store, Undercover, to see how customers are treated. What I witnessed was both inspiring and alarming. Some employees, like Ryan here, showed me the warmth and dedication I've always envisioned for Adams Emporium. Others, unfortunately, did not." He paused, letting the words settle. Toby shifted uncomfortably. Mark continued. "I won't sugarcoat it. I saw an employee ignore customers, treat them like they were inconveniences. This person didn't represent what our company stands for. More importantly, I realized our processes might be failing, since no one stepped in to correct such behavior, or perhaps no one felt empowered to do so." Several employees exchanged worried glances. Sheila looked down, guilt spreading across her face. Then Mark looked at Ryan. "Ryan, I want to thank you. Your kindness and professionalism last week reminded me why I started this business. That's why, effective immediately, I'm promoting you to assistant manager. We can't keep overlooking talent like yours. Thank you for setting a bright example." Applause broke out, and Ryan looked stunned, his eyes gleaming with appreciation. He managed a quiet, "Thank you, sir," as Mark shook his hand. Next, Mark turned to Toby. "Toby," he said gently but firmly, "I saw how you treated customers. That stops now. If you can't follow our company values, this isn't the place for you. However, I'm not here to write you off. I believe people can change if they want to. I'm giving you an opportunity to prove you can show our customers the respect they deserve. Ryan here will mentor you in the coming weeks, and if you decide to step up, we'll support you. If not, we'll have to part ways." Toby swallowed, nodding in a slow, solemn way that suggested he grasped the gravity of the moment. Whether he would actually change remained to be seen. Mark spent the rest of the meeting outlining new initiatives: improved training sessions focused on customer empathy, tighter oversight of employee performance with real consequences for repeated misconduct, and more robust budgets for hiring so that dedicated workers wouldn't be stretched too thin. Employees murmured in agreement, relief clear on their faces. As the meeting concluded, Mark caught sight of Ryan leaning in to say something encouraging to Toby. It was a small gesture, but it encapsulated the culture Mark hoped to foster: employees helping each other, instead of leaving newcomers to flounder or fall behind. In the following weeks, Mark made good on his promises. Headquarters rolled out a revised training manual that emphasized genuine customer engagement. Each store was asked to set up a feedback box for shoppers and employees alike. with the option to submit concerns anonymously. Store managers, including Sheila, were offered support sessions to address staffing challenges, and they were told to prioritize promotions for long-term employees who consistently performed above expectations. Mark also sent out an all-hands memo, reminding everyone of the company's founding principle: people first, policies second. It was more than a slogan. It was the core of how Adams Emporium was meant to do business. Meanwhile, at Store 87, Ryan stepped into his assistant manager role with optimism, though the tasks quickly piled up. He had to create schedules, handle inventory issues, and occasionally break up disputes between employees. Yet he managed to maintain his good humor and treat each problem with the same caring attitude he showed customers. Toby, now under Ryan's mentorship, struggled at first. Changing ingrained habits wasn't easy. He was used to checking his phone when bored, brushing off customers if he felt pressed for time, and blaming store policies when confronted with complaints. However, Ryan patiently demonstrated more constructive approaches, like actively listening, offering alternatives, and asking if customers had any special needs. Little by little, Toby showed signs of improving. One day, an elderly woman wanted to exchange a defective blender. Toby had the immediate reflex to mention a store policy requiring a clean receipt, but then he paused. He glanced at Ryan, who gave an encouraging nod. Toby took a breath, apologized for the inconvenience, and worked with the woman to find a solution. He even walked her to the aisle with the replacement blenders, explaining the differences between models. Mark, who happened to be visiting for a quick check-in that afternoon, witnessed the scene from afar. He saw Toby politely guiding the customer, and a small smile found its way onto Mark's face. Toby's transformation, though far from complete, was a testament to the power of second chances and supportive mentorship. It also confirmed Mark's belief that some employees just needed guidance and accountability to shine. In private conversations, Toby admitted he'd been dealing with stress from juggling multiple jobs over the years. He'd assumed no one cared about his well-being, so he'd stopped caring about the job. "I was wrong," he told Ryan quietly one morning as they restocked a display of bedsheets. "I'm sorry I came off like I did. This place deserves better." Things also improved for the store's overall morale. Customers noticed friendlier staff members, shorter wait times, and a revitalized environment. Sales inched upward, although Mark cared more about the intangible changes, like how employees now felt they had a voice, or how customers left with a sense of being valued. Sheila, feeling the support from corporate, worked with Ryan to coordinate better training for new hires. Together, they weeded out those who blatantly showed no interest in providing good service, focusing resources on people willing to invest themselves in the job. At corporate headquarters, Mark shared the lessons of Store 87 with the entire leadership team. He insisted that every store manager commit to on-the-floor visits, talking to employees face-to-face, and occasionally playing the role of a secret shopper themselves. Some executives balked at first, citing busy schedules, but Mark's stance was unyielding. "If we can't make time to see how our mission lives in each store," he said, "then we'll lose the heart of this business." One of his father's maxims came to mind: "You can't lead from a distance if you want to see what truly matters." Over time, Mark noticed that other stores reported improvements in teamwork and customer satisfaction. A few store managers discovered their own Tobys, people who were underperforming yet salvageable with proper guidance. They also uncovered Ryans, hidden gems who'd been quietly holding everything together without recognition. It dawned on Mark that for all the complexities of modern retail, big data, online competition, advanced supply chains, the simplest things still mattered most: respecting employees, listening to customers, and creating an environment where everyone could thrive. Even so, Mark didn't pretend everything was fixed overnight. Some employees refused to change and left. Some store managers admitted they felt overwhelmed by the new demands. But piece by piece, the culture began to shift toward a more hands-on leadership model, one that championed individual accountability and mutual support. Mark spent a lot of time encouraging people in meetings, reminding them that the ultimate goal went beyond profits. "When we founded Adams Emporium," he often said, "we wanted families to come here because they felt at home. not just because our prices were decent. That's the feeling we need to rekindle. One afternoon, while visiting another store, Mark overheard a middle-aged couple chatting about how they loved how neighborly the staff was. They'd chosen Adams Emporium over a big online retailer simply because they enjoyed the in-person experience. Hearing that, Mark felt a rush of satisfaction. This is what my father and I dreamed of, he thought, recalling how, in his boyhood, they greeted every customer by name. Now, in a larger, more complex setting, that personal touch could still exist, if nurtured properly. At Store 87, Toby continued working under Ryan's guidance. The turning point came one busy Saturday when the store was packed, and a frustrated customer complained about a missing sale tag. Instead of brushing her off, Toby calmly explained they'd honor the sale price she'd seen online, then led her to the correct aisle. Ryan watched from a distance, grinning as Toby bagged the purchase, and thanked the customer sincerely for shopping at Adams Emporium. When the line was clear, Toby approached Ryan. "It feels good," Toby admitted, still somewhat surprised. "I never thought I'd care about any job this much." Ryan clapped him on the shoulder, and they got back to helping the next wave of customers. Mark dropped in that same evening. Seeing Toby's newfound attitude, he decided to hold a brief staff huddle. Employees encircled him near the front of the store, curious about what he had to say. "I want to thank everyone for the improvements I've seen. It's not just about the bottom line. It's about how people feel when they walk through these doors. Every kind word, every little courtesy, builds our reputation. Keep it up, and if you have ideas on how we can do better, speak up. My door is always open." The staff broke into applause. Even Toby looked proud. A month after Mark's undercover adventure, Store 87's sales had ticked up modestly, but customer feedback soared in positivity. Toby, once known for being dismissive, had earned 3 commendations from satisfied shoppers. Ryan excelled as assistant manager, balancing old duties with new responsibilities. Sheila, freed from the constant worry of staff shortages, found time to refine store layouts and implement new signage that made shopping easier. Mark, reflecting on these shifts, realized that the undercover visit had forced him to confront the heart of his business, how employees truly treat customers. He vowed never again to rely solely on sanitized reports. Eventually, Mark shared the story of Store 87 in an internal company newsletter, praising the employees who embraced change and used the lessons to better serve customers. He ended the piece with a simple call to action. When was the last time you walked a mile in your customer's shoes? Let's keep reminding ourselves that numbers tell one side of the story, but the real magic happens in the human interactions on our store floors. He also gathered his senior team to discuss rolling out the same undercover approach in different regions, not just as a gotcha tactic, but as a constructive way to gather insights. He emphasized the importance of celebrating the Ryans they encountered and offering support to the Tobys. After all, it wasn't just about punishing bad behavior. It was about building a culture where care and respect thrived organically, making both employees and customers feel valued. By late autumn, Mark felt both relieved and invigorated. While challenges still lurked, competition from online giants, supply chain disruptions, and workforce turnover, he believed more than ever that Adams Emporium could stand out by upholding its original principles. He recalled another favorite saying of his father's, "When you light one candle, you can see a few steps ahead. When everyone lights a candle, you can see far and wide." Watching Toby and Ryan work together as a team, Mark felt that multiple candles were shining across the store, guiding Adams Emporium toward a more promising future. Now, you might be wondering what lessons this story holds for you. Maybe you're an executive wondering if your reports match reality. Perhaps you're an employee who feels overlooked, or maybe you're a customer who's grown tired of poor service. The truth is, no matter where you stand, each of us has a role in shaping our environment. If you're a leader, don't hide in the numbers. See with your own eyes how everyday operations unfold. If you're an employee who cares, trust that your efforts matter, even if recognition seems slow. And if you're in Toby's shoes, disengaged or disillusioned, consider that all it takes is a shift in attitude and the right support to find real fulfillment. People rarely improve when they have no other model but themselves to copy, goes an old proverb, and it captures how mentorship and good examples spark transformation. Here's one last thought. Big changes often start with small steps, like Mark swapping out his suit for jeans and strolling into a store as an average customer. If you find yourself facing issues in your workplace, remember Mark's example. When you take care of people, they take care of you. That old saying holds true in families, communities, and yes, even retail empires. By choosing to value each interaction, whether with your colleagues or with a customer, you contribute to a culture of warmth and respect that makes everything run better. I hope this story encourages you to look deeper than the surface. Perhaps you'll be moved to step into someone else's perspective, whether you're a CEO, a staff member, or a shopper. You might be inspired to mentor a struggling coworker or champion someone's promotion. Above all, remember that when leaders stay grounded in daily realities, they can spark improvements that ripple throughout an organization. If you've had an experience at a store, good or bad, that left a mark on you, I'd love to hear it. Your stories, your comments, and your perspectives all help keep this conversation alive and meaningful. Feel free to share what you've encountered, and let's keep learning from one another. After all, our combined insights can light more candles, helping each of us see a little farther along the path we're traveling.